I'm of the mindset that if you want to resist authoritarianism, you have to look at the people who were under authoritarianism, right? And, for the better part of American history, that was African Americans. So I think men like MLK, men like Malcolm X, the whole civil rights movement, they wrote the blueprint on how to resist what we're doing now. They set the standard on how to resist. And so when I think of MLK's legacy, I think of it as a game plan. I think of the things that he did as a game plan because we are living in modern times under the thumb of somebody who wants to be a full-fledged authoritarian. I hope you don't mind if I get political on the show, Ray.
This show is political, brother. So please
Okay,
go
all
right
right.
ahead. School us, man. I'm just taking notes.
I, when I see Trump and like the ICE agents, and they're going door to door in different houses that and they're locking people up and taking away our immigrant neighbors and our immigrant friends. And I saw a video where a man was accosted by an ICE agent, and the ICE agent had a thicker accent than the man that he was accosting. And he goes, "Well, I'm stopping you because you have an accent." And the guy's like, "You have an accent too. Where are you from?" And so when I see that, it reminds me of the vagrancy laws in the South, that said black men couldn't be at home. They couldn't, just go about their day. They had to be doing something, or else they could be arrested, or they could be fined, or they could be, taken away. So when I think about Martin Luther King's legacy, I think of it as a blueprint. And we need it now more than ever. If ever there was a time to learn history, if ever there was a time to learn how people handled things, authoritarianism, it is now. So this is like, if tomorrow's the only day that you're learning about Martin Luther King, buckle up, buckaroo, because you're gonna need it. You're gonna need that blueprint well for the next at least 3 years.
There's so much that comes to mind thinking about MLK, and the first one is, and this is history that unfortunately Americans don't truly understand, and most honestly, I don't think really enough Latinos truly understand, is that you and I would not be having this conversation today with the educations we were able to acquire in this country without MLK as Latinos. And you go down the line in terms of the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act and acts that opened the doors for bilingual education, that were open, that the civil rights, the Black civil rights movement opened up for us, and affirmative action and college access, and go on, the corporate, diversity initiatives that Black people have led, and we benefited from.
Absolutely.
And the inspiration of our sort of parents' generation, Anthony, of the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, for Latinos to have to contribute with their own Latino civil rights, Brown Power movements. My dad was a young lord, for example, and there's lots of examples of that. Brown Pride, Chicano movements, and many others. The other thing I think about is how history is so relevant because it's so close to our realities. I'm old enough to remember when MLK wasn't a federal holiday. And I loved your quote, your content about that you posted. I don't know if it was today or this weekend or recently, about how Stevie Wonder's song "Happy Birthday" was a call to protest and to activate ourselves. So that in the mid '80s, a Republican president, ironically enough, signed MLK into law. And Rito Moreno was at the March on Washington. So these are, my parents were activists at the time. I was born only 6 years after his assassination. So to go from what feels like ancient history, but it actually is very modern history, to where we felt like we had sort of a turning point with those pieces of legislation in the late '60s. Let's fast forward to the Obama election, where we felt, I think especially people in our generation, Anthony, felt we had hit another turning point, and that we felt that there would be a better country here for our children in that sense, or a more open country and more opportunities for our kids. To now feeling like we may be living in the Soviet Union, don't realize it yet. So just what lessons specifically, Anthony, one or two lessons you want to share with our audience that you think, particularly from a Latino or just an organizing perspective at this time where we're literally and figuratively under attack, that you think would be relevant for our folks to understand and really own and learn and study more on.
Right. I think that a lesson that I really think people need to learn is to embrace the established organizations. Right. For example, I'm a member of the NAACP. I think I see a lot of people and they're like, oh, I want to start a nonprofit. I want to start an organization. But there are so many organizations that are out there. For example, the ACLU, for example, the NAACP, that have been doing the hard work for generations, that we don't need to start anything new. We have things that are established, that have the infrastructure, that have the donors in place to get the work done that needs to be done to protect democracy. That's one thing, to really lean into the organizations that are there, because they need our help. They need members, they need financing, they need our help, they need our voice, things like that. Another thing I think people need to realize is that history doesn't happen in a vacuum. History repeats itself. Everything that Trump is doing, everything is adopted by Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, or there's another guy, I can't remember his name. I think it's Cleveland. No, not Cleveland. There's another president that did
Grover
pretty much.
Yeah.
It was a Grover Cleveland.
Maybe, yeah. I'm not sure what
it might be. It might be Grover Cleveland, but he's not getting these ideas in a vacuum, right? And I think it's important for people to sit down and really analyze what Trump is doing, because this Greenland thing, this thing that's going on with Greenland is not new. During the Cold War, the United States kicked out thousands of people in Greenland to build the military base that's there now. There's a military base in Greenland. And the United States kicked out tons of indigenous people and moved them to the furthest northern city in the world. If you look up the furthest northern city in the world, it looks like it's in like ice, and there's people that live there. And this is nothing new. The United States has been playing this Greenland game for a long time. But now we have a president that's like, you know what? We're just going to take the whole thing now. So, I think that people really need to realize that history doesn't happen in a vacuum. Everything is coming from somewhere. And he's not doing anything new. He's just mixing everything together to get authoritarian control. Does that make sense?
And this is part of what's so infuriating about all this, is that if you don't study history, you don't learn from it. And obviously you're doomed to repeat it, right? And I think about this, Anthony, and I know you appreciate this, and you've shared a lot of good content on this angle, but I think about the Puerto Rican angle and just thinking about, the reason that Puerto Rico was so appealing to the U.S. government 120 something years ago during, the Spanish-American War was its strategic military geographic location, right, and the manpower and the tropics and the trading stuff and all the assets that we had and resources. Fast forward to 2026, and now we're being used as the launch point for this incursion into Venezuela. And culturally, I just had Ade Ferro on the show, Venezuelan American activist. And I mean, culturally, Anthony, who are we closer to and have more of a shared humanity with than our Caribbean brothers and sisters como in Venezuela? So the last thing Puerto Ricans want to do is do anything to harm people in Venezuela. Those are our fam, you know what I mean? And right. But we're being used for that. And just thinking about the irony of seeing people from some of our Latin American countries who are here now, who voted for Trump, when they left their family left those countries because fleeing authoritarianism, whether it was coming from the right or the left, and oftentimes it was right-wing authoritarianism that the United States had put in place.
Right.
And fast forward to what's happening, potentially could happen, what'll likely try to happen in Venezuela. I mean, Maria, and I don't claim to be a Latin American political analyst, but the head of the the anti Maduro movement, just spoke at
Yeah.
the Heritage Foundation. So
She
obviously
did.
she's right leaning sister. So
She did.
so we'll see how that goes.